My son-in-law called my truck a piece of junk in Portuguese, laughing with his father right there in my own driveway. He had no idea I understood every single word. Let me tell you something about patience. 63 years on this earth taught me that the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served at exactly the right moment, when the truth does all the work for you. My name is Robert Holloway. My friends call me Bobby. I spent 41 years as a welder in the shipyards of Galveston, Texas. Retired now, living in the same modest house I bought back in 1982. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a workshop in the garage that smells like motor oil and sawdust. Nothing fancy, just home. My daughter Emma is my whole world. Has been since her mother Patricia passed away 12 years ago. Breast cancer. Took her in 8 months. Emma was 24 then, just finishing her nursing degree. She held her mother's hand at the end while I stood there useless. A man who could weld steel beams together but couldn't do a damn thing to save his wife. After Patricia died, Emma and I became closer than ever. Sunday dinners, phone calls every other day. She'd come over and help me tend Patricia's garden, the roses her mother loved so much. We never talked about the grief directly. That's not how Holloway people operate. We just showed up for each other. That was enough. 3 years ago, Emma met Rafael Santos at a medical conference in Houston. He's a pharmaceutical sales rep, comes from money down in Sao Paulo, Brazil. His family owns some kind of agricultural export business. Soybeans, coffee. I never quite got the details straight. What I did understand was that Rafael drove a Mercedes, wore watches that cost more than my truck, and looked at my daughter like she was the most beautiful woman in the world. That last part was the only thing that mattered to me. They got married 14 months after they met. Beautiful ceremony at a vineyard outside Austin. His family flew up from Brazil, maybe 30 of them, all dressed like they were attending a royal wedding. His mother, Cecilia, wore enough diamonds to blind a man. His father, Augusto, had that look rich people get, like they're constantly evaluating everything and everyone around them, assigning price tags in their heads. I showed up in my best suit, the navy blue one I bought for Patricia's funeral. Emma told me I looked handsome. That was enough. The wedding cost more than I made in 2 years of welding. Raphael's family paid for everything, they insisted. At the time, I thought it was generous. Looking back, I think it was the first move in a chess game I didn't even know I was playing. After the wedding, things changed slowly. Emma moved to Houston with Raphael. The Sunday dinners became monthly, then every other month. The phone calls got shorter. She always sounded tired, a little distant. When I asked if everything was okay, she'd say yes too quickly, change the subject to something safe. I'm not a stupid man. I knew something was wrong. But Emma's a grown woman, and I raised her to be strong, to handle her own problems. Pushing too hard would only push her away. So I waited. I watched. And I started paying closer attention to my new son-in-law. Raphael was charming. I'll give him that. He had that salesman polish, always knew the right thing to say. Always had a compliment ready. Too ready, if you asked me. The way he talked to me felt like a performance. Yes, sir. No, sir. Your daughter is my whole world, sir. But his eyes never matched his words. They'd drift to his phone, to his watch, to anywhere but my face. His father, Augusto, was worse. The man barely spoke English, or at least pretended not to. He'd sit at family dinners looking bored, occasionally muttering things in Portuguese to his wife or his son. They'd all chuckle at whatever he said while Emma and I sat there like outsiders at our own table. That bothered me more than I let on. Now here's something nobody knew about me. Not even Emma. Back in 1979, fresh out of high school, I joined the Navy. Served 6 years, most of it on a destroyer, doing exercises off the coast of South America. Our ship spent 8 months docked in Rio de Janeiro for joint operations with the Brazilian Navy. 8 months of shore leave, local bars, and a Brazilian girlfriend named Lucia, who taught me her language with the kind of patience only love can provide. I became fluent in Portuguese. Not just tourist phrases. Fluent. I could argue politics, tell jokes, discuss philosophy after a few beers. Lucia wanted me to stay in Brazil, marry her, work on her father's fishing boat. I almost did, but my mother back in Texas got sick, and I had to come home. Lucia and I wrote letters for a while, then stopped. Life moved on. I never forgot the language, though. It's like riding a bicycle. You might get rusty, but it never really leaves you. Over the years, I kept it sharp by reading Brazilian news online, watching telenovelas when nobody was around, even chatting with the Brazilian crew members who sometimes came through the shipyard. But I never told anyone. Not Patricia, not Emma, not anyone. It wasn't a secret exactly. It just never came up. And after a while, it became my private thing, a part of my past that belonged only to me and the memory of a girl in Rio who smelled like coconut and laughed like music. When Emma married into a Brazilian family, I figured my hidden skill might come in handy someday. I just didn't know how right I was. The moment everything changed happened 6 months ago. Emma and Raphael were hosting a 4th of July barbecue at their house in Houston. Big fancy place in the suburbs, 4 bedrooms, a pool, the kind of house that looks like it belongs in a magazine. Raphael's parents had flown up for the holiday. Some of their Houston friends came too, other Brazilian expat families with money and opinions. I drove down from Galveston in my truck, 1994 Ford F-150, dark blue, 260,000 miles on the odometer. I've had that truck for 30 years. Replaced the engine twice, the transmission once. Fixed more rust spots than I can count. It's not pretty anymore, but it runs like a dream, and it's paid off. In my book, that makes it perfect. I pulled into Emma's driveway and parked behind Raphael's Mercedes and his father's rented BMW. My truck looked like a poor relative at a rich family reunion, which I suppose was accurate. Raphael came out to greet me. Smile wide, handshake firm, every hair in place. "Bobby, so glad you could make it. How was the drive?" "Not bad. Traffic on I-45 was light for once. Great, great. Hey, let me help you with that." He reached for the cooler I was pulling from the truck bed. Inside was my contribution to the barbecue, brisket, 14 pounds of prime beef that I'd been smoking for 16 hours in my backyard pit. The one Patricia bought me for our 20th anniversary. I'd rubbed it with her secret spice blend, the recipe she'd perfected over 30 years of Sunday cookouts. Raphael looked at the cooler like it contained roadkill. "Oh, you brought 2 meat? That's so sweet, Bobby. But we actually hired a caterer. They're doing Wagyu steaks, imported from Japan. Very high-end. That's fine. This is just brisket. Texas style. Figured your Brazilian friends might want to try some real American barbecue." His smile tightened just a fraction. "Sure, we'll find a spot for it somewhere." The cooler ended up on a table in the corner of the backyard, unopened, while the caterer served Wagyu steaks that cost more per ounce than my monthly grocery bill. I watched Raphael's friends pick at the fancy meat with their fancy forks, and I thought about the 16 hours I'd spent tending that smoker, waking up at 3 in the morning to check the temperature, thinking about Patricia the whole time. Nobody touched my brisket, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came later, after the fireworks, when the crowd had thinned to just family. Emma was inside cleaning up. I was sitting in a lawn chair by the pool, nursing a beer, watching the stars. Raphael and his father were standing maybe 20 feet away, near the outdoor kitchen, speaking in Portuguese. They didn't know I was listening. They didn't know I could understand. "Pai, you should have seen his truck," Raphael said. "A complete piece of junk, falling apart. I'm embarrassed it's parked in my driveway. What will the neighbors think?" Augusto laughed. "What do you expect? The man is a manual laborer, probably never made more than pennies his whole life. Look at how he dresses. That suit at the wedding looked like it came from a thrift store." "It probably did. Emma says he's always been cheap, never spent money on anything nice, lives in the same tiny house for 40 years. Poor people don't know how to live. They're afraid of success. Your wife, though, she's different." She got out. "Barely. You should see how she acts sometimes, worrying about prices, clipping coupons. I'm trying to break her of those habits. Give it time. She'll learn. At least she's beautiful. That counts for something." Raphael nodded. "The old man won't be around forever anyway. Then Emma won't have any reason to drag us down to that depressing little town." Augusto clapped his son on the shoulder. Just be patient. A few more years and you won't have to pretend to respect him anymore. They laughed together, father and son, bonding over their contempt for me. I sat very still in my lawn chair. My beer had gone warm in my hand. My heart was pounding, but not with anger. Not yet. At that moment, I felt something colder. Clarity. I understood exactly who these people were. I understood what my daughter had married into. And I understood that patience, the same patience that had served me for 63 years, would serve me again now. I didn't confront them. Not that night. Instead, I finished my beer, said my goodbyes, hugged Emma a little tighter than usual, and drove my piece of junk truck back to Galveston. The whole way home, I listened to their words echoing in my head. Manual laborer, pennies, cheap, depressing, won't be around forever. They had no idea who they were dealing with. After that 4th of July barbecue, I started watching and listening more carefully. Every time I visited Houston, I made sure to be within earshot when Raphael and his family spoke Portuguese. They never suspected a thing. Why would they? The old welder from Galveston, the guy with the junk truck and the thrift store suit, how could he possibly understand their sophisticated language? What I heard over the following months made my blood run cold. Raphael complained about Emma constantly. She was too emotional, too attached to her father, too focused on her nursing career instead of hosting dinner parties for his clients. He called her provincial, small-minded, too American. His mother, Cecilia, agreed, saying Emma lacked the refinement expected of a Santos wife. She needed to be molded, they said, broken of her bad habits. The worst conversation happened at Thanksgiving. Raphael's parents were visiting again. Emma had cooked a full traditional dinner, turkey and stuffing, and all the fixings. She'd been in the kitchen since dawn. When I arrived, she looked exhausted but happy, proud of the spread she'd prepared. Raphael barely touched his plate. Later, in the study, I overheard him talking to his mother. The food was mediocre at best. She doesn't understand seasoning. Back home, our cooks would be ashamed to serve something so bland. Cecilia said, you knew what you were getting when you married an American. They don't appreciate good food or good style. Did you see the dress she wore? Off the rack? I could tell. I'll take her shopping next time. Show her what a real woman should wear. Don't bother. She'll just cry about the prices. Like her father. Did you know he actually suggested we visit his house for Christmas? Can you imagine? Spending the holiday in that shack? Absolutely not. Tell him we have plans. Make something up. I always do. I stood outside that door, fists clenched, jaw tight. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to walk in there and tell them exactly what I thought of them, to defend my daughter, my house, my life. But I didn't. Not yet. The right moment hadn't come. Meanwhile, I did some research. One of my buddies from the shipyard, a guy named Marcus Chen, had a son who worked in international business. I asked Marcus if his kid could look into the Santos family's agricultural company in Brazil. Nothing illegal, just public records, business filings, that sort of thing. What came back was interesting. The Santos family was wealthy, no question, but their wealth was complicated. The agricultural business had been struggling for years, hit hard by commodity price fluctuations and drought. They'd been taking on debt, leveraging properties, living beyond their means. The fancy cars, the designer clothes, the extravagant lifestyle was mostly financed by credit and hope. Raphael's pharmaceutical sales job was solid, but not spectacular. He made good money, but not Santos family money. He was living off his family's reputation more than their actual wealth. And then there was the matter of the house. Emma and Raphael's beautiful suburban home with the pool and the 4 bedrooms. I'd assumed Raphael paid for it, but the property records told a different story. The down payment had come from a trust fund, Emma's trust fund. The one Patricia and I had started when Emma was born, adding to it for 36 years. Every bonus I earned at the shipyard, every tax refund, every bit of extra money went into that fund. By the time Emma got married, it held just over $300,000. Raphael had convinced Emma to use it for the house, For their future, he said. For the family they'd build together. Emma had never told me, probably because she knew I'd have questions. Questions like why a man from such a wealthy family needed his wife's money to buy a house. I had my questions now. I just needed the right moment to ask them. That moment came 2 weeks ago. Emma called me on a Tuesday afternoon. She'd been crying. I could tell from her voice, that raw quality that comes from tears recently shed. Daddy, can I come visit this weekend? Just me? Of course, sweetheart. Everything okay? I just need to see you. I need to come home for a bit. She arrived Friday evening, driving her sensible Honda instead of Raphael's Mercedes. She looked thin, tired. The spark that used to light up her eyes had dimmed to almost nothing. I didn't push. I made her favorite dinner, chicken fried steak with mashed potatoes, and we sat on the porch watching the sunset over Patricia's roses. Eventually, she started talking. Raphael wants me to quit my job. Your nursing job? The one you love? He says it's not appropriate for someone in his position to have a wife who works. His mother agrees. They want me to be available for social events, charity functions, that kind of thing. What do you want? I don't know anymore. She wiped her eyes. I feel like I've been disappearing since I got married. Like there's less of me every day. They criticize everything. My clothes, my cooking, my accent. Did you know they make fun of my accent? Apparently I sound too Texan. There's nothing wrong with sounding Texan. I know. But when you hear it enough times... She broke down then. Really broke down. I held my daughter while she sobbed, and I felt 41 years of calluses on my hands. Hands that had worked hard every day to give her a good life, a happy life. And I thought about Raphael and his father standing by that pool, laughing about how I'd made pennies my whole life, how I was cheap and depressing and wouldn't be around forever. The anger finally came. Cold and clean and righteous. Emma, there's something I need to tell you. I told her everything. The Portuguese. What I'd overheard. All of it. At first, she didn't believe me. Then she made me prove it. I pulled up a Brazilian news site on my phone and read an article out loud, translating as I went. Her face went through about 6 different emotions in 30 seconds. Daddy. All this time. I know. I should have told you sooner, but I needed to be sure, and I needed you to see for yourself what kind of man you married. She was quiet for a long time. Then she asked the question I'd been waiting for. What do we do now? That depends on you, sweetheart. But if you want my advice, I think it's time for the Santos family to learn a little lesson about respect. The plan came together over that weekend. Emma had been keeping records, it turned out. Bank statements, receipts, emails. Some part of her had known for a while that something was wrong. She just hadn't wanted to face it. What the records showed was ugly. Raphael had been transferring money from their joint account to his personal account. Small amounts at first, then larger. Over 2 years, he'd moved nearly $50,000. Money for business investments, he'd told Emma. Investments that somehow never produced any returns. There was also the matter of the house. Emma had signed the papers, but she'd never actually read them. When she finally did, she discovered that Raphael had taken out a second mortgage without telling her, using the equity to pay off his credit cards. Their house, the one bought with her trust fund, was now leveraged to the hilt. Raphael was bleeding her dry, and his family was helping. Here's something else I should tell you. Something about that truck of mine. The 1994 Ford F-150 that Raphael called a piece of junk. A few years back, one of the collectors who hangs around classic car shows in Galveston approached me in a parking lot, told me my truck was special, said it was a factory sleeper, one of the limited production models Ford made in the early 90s. The specific engine and transmission combination, the original paint, the low rust, something about matching numbers. I didn't understand all the technical details. What I understood was his offer, $75,000. I turned him down. The truck wasn't for sale, but I got curious and had it appraised officially, just for insurance purposes. The appraised value came back at $92,000, and that was 3 years ago. With the classic truck market booming, the appraiser said it was probably worth closer to $120,000 now. My piece of junk truck was worth more than Raphael's Mercedes. But that wasn't even my main card to play. The main card was something I'd never told anyone, something I'd been saving for Emma's future. Back in 1989, a buddy of mine at the shipyard convinced me to invest in this new tech company going public. Little outfit out of Seattle that made software for personal computers. I didn't know anything about computers, but I trusted my buddy, so I put in $5,000. It was a big chunk of my savings at the time. The company was Microsoft. I'd kept those shares through every split, every boom, every market crash. Never sold a single one. By the time Patricia got sick, that $5,000 had grown to something I still had trouble wrapping my head around. $4.3 million. Patricia knew. We'd talked about what to do with it. She wanted to leave it for Emma, but quietly. Let her live her own life, make her own way, without the burden of sudden wealth. I agreed. After Patricia died, I kept the secret. The money sat in a brokerage account, growing, waiting. I'd always planned to tell Emma eventually. Maybe when she had kids, maybe when she retired. The right moment never seemed to come. Until now. Last Sunday, Emma invited Raphael and his parents over for dinner. At my house, in Galveston. The shack they'd laughed about. The depressing little town they couldn't wait for me to die so they wouldn't have to visit anymore. Raphael tried to beg off, but Emma insisted. She told him I wasn't feeling well, that she was worried about me. That got their attention. Nothing like the prospect of inheritance to motivate greedy people. They arrived around 5 in the afternoon. Raphael's Mercedes, his father's rental BMW, my daughter's Honda, all lined up in my driveway behind my truck. I watched them from the window as they got out, saw Augusto gesture at my truck and say something that made Raphael laugh. Go ahead, I thought. Laugh while you can. I'd clean the house until it sparkled. Set the table with the good china, Patricia's china, the set we'd gotten as a wedding gift 53 years ago. I'd cooked the meal myself. Brisket, of course. The same brisket they'd ignored at the 4th of July barbecue. This time, they were going to eat it. Emma greeted them at the door. She looked different today. Straighter spine, clearer eyes. She'd spent the past 2 weeks preparing, and it showed. Raphael kissed her cheek, barely looking at her, already scanning the house with those appraising eyes. His mother followed, nose slightly wrinkled. Augusto came last, not bothering to hide his disdain. Bobby, Raphael shook my hand with his usual too firm grip. The place looks cozy, very authentic Americana. Thanks for coming. I know it's a long drive. Anything for family. We settled into the living room. I offered drinks. Augusto asked for wine, then frowned when I brought out a bottle of Texas Red instead of whatever fancy vintage he was expecting. Interesting choice, he said in English. Then, in Portuguese to his wife, probably cost $10. These people don't understand quality. It was actually 15, I replied, in Portuguese. The silence that followed was beautiful. Raphael froze with his glass halfway to his lips. Augusto's face went slack. Cecilia actually gasped, her hand flying to her chest. You speak Portuguese? Raphael stammered. Fluently. Have since I was 20 years old. Navy service in Brazil. There was a girl in Rio who taught me. I never forgot. I let that sink in. Watched the color drain from their faces as they mentally reviewed every conversation they'd had in my presence over the past 3 years. All those things you said about me, about my daughter, about my truck and my house and my suit. I understood every word. Raphael stood up. Bobby, I don't know what you think you heard, but sit down, son. I haven't finished. Something in my voice made him sit. Let me tell you a few things about myself. Things you never bothered to learn because you were too busy counting my pennies and waiting for me to die. I told them about my Navy service. About the ship, the shore leave, Lucia, and her coconut smell. I told them about coming home to take care of my mother, starting at the shipyard at 19, working my way up to senior welder over 4 decades. I told them about Patricia, how we met at a church picnic, how I knew I was going to marry her the moment she laughed at my terrible joke. Then I told them about the investments. That truck you think is junk? 1994 Ford F-150 factory sleeper. Limited production. Matching numbers. Last appraisal came in at $92,000, and that was 3 years ago. It's worth more than your Mercedes, Raphael, by about $20,000. More silence. But that's nothing. Just a truck. Let me tell you about Microsoft. I explained the investment, the $5,000 in 1989, the splits, the growth, the decades of patience. Current value is a little over $4.3 million. I was planning to leave it all to Emma when I passed, but recent events have made me reconsider. I looked at my daughter. She was crying again, but different tears this time. She'd known some of this, but not all. Not the full number. Emma, honey, come here. She came to stand beside me. I took her hand. Your mother and I worked our whole lives to give you a good future. Not because we wanted you to be rich, but because we wanted you to be free. Free to make your own choices. Free to live your own life. I turned to Raphael. You took her freedom. You took her money. You made her feel small so you could feel big. And you did it while smiling in my face and laughing behind my back. Raphael's charm had completely evaporated. He looked pale, sweaty, trapped. Bobby, let's talk about this. I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding. Emma's seen the bank records. We know about the transfers, the second mortgage, all of it. She's already consulted with a lawyer. Cecilia spoke up, her English suddenly much better than she'd pretended. You can't prove anything. It was a marriage. Shared finances are normal. Maybe. But shared finances usually don't involve hiding $50,000 in a secret account, or forging your wife's signature on a second mortgage application. Raphael went pale. Emma spoke for the first time since they'd arrived. I didn't sign those papers, Raphael. I looked them up. That's not my signature. My lawyer says that's fraud. My lawyer also says that, given the circumstances, I have grounds for a divorce that will not be favorable to you. Emma, baby, please. Don't call me that. Don't call me baby. You called me provincial, small-minded, too American. You said I sound too Texan. She pulled off her wedding ring and set it on the table. Well, here's something Texan for you. I'm taking back my life. I'm keeping the house since you bought it with my money anyway. And I'm going back to my nursing job, the one you wanted me to quit because it embarrassed you. Augusto stood up, his face red with anger. This is ridiculous. You can't just sit down. My voice cut through his bluster like a welding torch through sheet metal. He sat. Let me tell you how this is going to go. Emma's going to divorce your son. It's going to be quick. It's going to be clean. And it's not going to cost her a dime more than it has to. Your son is going to agree to everything because if he doesn't, we'll press charges for fraud. That second mortgage will make his life very complicated. I leaned forward. You're also going to go back to Brazil and stay there. I don't want to see your faces in Texas again. You came to this country and looked down on everyone who wasn't rich enough for your standards. But here's the thing about standards. Real wealth isn't about price tags. It's about what you've built, what you've earned, what you leave behind. I pointed to the wall, where a framed photo of Patricia hung next to our wedding picture. That woman was the love of my life. We had 41 years together. We raised an amazing daughter. We built a home, not a showpiece, a real home. And when she died, the church was standing room only, with people who loved her. I looked at Augusto. When you die, how many people will show up? How many actually love you? Or will it just be people calculating their share of what you leave behind? He had no answer. Dinner was quiet after that. They ate my brisket, every bite, and they didn't say a word. When they left, Raphael tried one more time. At the door, away from his parents, he grabbed Emma's arm. Emma, think about this. We can work it out. I made mistakes, but let go of my daughter. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Raphael let go. They drove away, the Mercedes and the BMW, disappearing down the street. I stood on my porch with my arm around Emma and watched them go. Thank you, Daddy. Nothing to thank me for. You did the hard part. I couldn't have done it without you. We stood there for a while, watching the last light fade from the sky. The roses were blooming, Patricia's roses, red, and pink and yellow in the fading light. "What am I going to do now?" Emma asked. "Whatever you want. That's the whole point." She laughed, a real laugh, the first one I'd heard from her in years. "Maybe I'll go back to school, get my master's degree, become a nurse practitioner. Sounds like a plan. Or maybe I'll take some time off first, travel, see the world. Also good. Or maybe I'll just stay here for a while. Help you with the garden." I squeezed her shoulder. "Whatever you need, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere." Last week, the divorce papers were finalized. Emma got the house, just like we'd planned. Raphael signed everything without a fight. Turns out the threat of fraud charges is very motivating. I heard through the grapevine that the Santos family went back to Brazil. Their agricultural business finally went under. Something about creditors calling in loans they couldn't pay. I don't know the details and I don't really care. What I care about is Emma. She's staying with me for now, sleeping in her old room, helping me tend the garden every morning. She's already enrolled in a nurse practitioner program starting in the fall. Houston Methodist, one of the best in the country. Last Sunday, we had a barbecue. Just the two of us, plus a few neighbors, and some of my buddies from the old shipyard days. I smoked a brisket, 14 pounds, 16 hours in the pit. Patricia's recipe. Everyone had seconds. After the guests left, Emma and I sat on the porch, watching the stars come out over Galveston. "Daddy? Yeah? That stuff you said about legacy. About what you leave behind. Did you really mean it?" I thought about it for a moment. Every word. Money's just money. It comes and goes. But the things you build with your hands, the love you put into the world, the people you raise up, that's what lasts. That's what matters. She was quiet for a while. "I want to be more like you when I grow up." I laughed. "Sweetheart, you're 39 years old." "I know, but I still have time to learn." I looked at my daughter, at the strength in her eyes, the set of her jaw, the way she held herself now, standing tall, standing free. "You already have," I said. "You just forgot for a while. Now you remember." She reached over and took my hand. We sat there together, father and daughter, watching the stars. And I thought about that old truck in the driveway, the piece of junk that was worth more than a Mercedes, the thing everyone underestimated because they couldn't see past its surface. Kind of like me, kind of like Emma, kind of like the things that really matter in this world. They don't come with price tags. They come with time, with work, with love, with patience. They're built day by day, year by year, moment by moment. And when the people who can't see that finally understand, it's not revenge. It's just the truth, finally speaking for itself. If you're watching this and you've got someone in your life who doesn't appreciate you, who looks down on you, who thinks they're better because of what they have instead of who they are, to remember this story. Remember that patience is a virtue, that the truth always comes out, and that the best revenge is living well, living true, and living free. I'm Robert Holloway. I'm 63 years old. I'm a retired welder from Galveston, Texas. And I'm richer than anyone knows. Not because of the Microsoft stock, not because of the truck. Because of Emma, because of Patricia's memory, because of the life I've built. That's wealth that nobody can take away. Thanks for listening. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got some roses to tend. And tomorrow, Emma and I are taking that old truck for a drive. Maybe down to the beach, maybe out to the country, doesn't matter where. What matters is that we're going together. What matters is that we're free.